and social justice warriors, each committed to protecting the Constitution of the United States, and each committed to denouncing hate crimes. They have stood beside us during times of fear as the AAPI community, along with communities of color, continue to be the target for these hate crimes. Each of you today continue to stand with all of us, helping us, protecting us, and encouraging us. We all know that racism is not patriotism, but today, despite being the hottest day of the year, you didn't go somewhere cool, you're not at the beach, you're here because your commitment to ending hate crimes is a priority. I'm honored to introduce a friend, a colleague who serves you each and every day to keep your community safe, Suffolk County District Attorney Kevin Hayden.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is good to see you all here today. You know, I'm going to speak just very briefly on the power of community, powers of communities like this, powers of communities like Winthrop, and I'm going to harken back just a little bit just to this morning. So just early this morning I was over in Winthrop, and over in Winthrop that community raised up a standard and planted 2 trees as a memorial to 2 people, 2 heroes from their community, 2 members of their community who were gunned down in an apparent hate crime just a year ago today. It was a powerful moment for that community. And now here I am at Lionsgate, standing with you all, and standing with all of you who've done so much hard work against AAPI and the insurgence and increase in Asian hate crimes over the last couple of years is very serious. It's something that we take very seriously. All hate crimes matter to us, and the rise in crimes against people of Asian descent is first and foremost on our mind, along with all of our communities of color. And we just want you to know that we stand together with you, we stand in solidarity with you. And you know, the life of Vincent Chin, here we are, it was 40 years ago that his life was snuffed out, okay? And his life was snuffed out by 2 men. His life was snuffed out, and it didn't get the attention it deserved. If you look at the history, it didn't get the attention it deserved. The people that committed that crime against him certainly didn't receive the sanctions that they deserved. And here we are, 40 years later, standing in memory of him at his memorial, and recognizing that we need to continue to stand against racism, against discrimination, and against hate crime. Martin Luther King, I can't take credit for this statement. Obviously, he was a great man and he said it, but I can repeat it. He said that darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. He said that hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. And it is only through the love and the light of communities like this and communities like Winthrop, where we stand together in solidarity against hate and against darkness, that we can raise up a standard against hate crimes, against discrimination, against prejudice, and against racism. So I'm honored to be here today. Know that my office will always stand with you as we raise up a standard against hate crimes. And I thank you all for being here on this hot day, and I'm turning it back over to you, Linda. Yep, thank you.
Works in collaboration with other elected officials to protect our rights and safety. It is an honor to have Suffolk County Sheriff Stephen Tompkins here with us today. Sheriff Tompkins has worked to revolutionize conditions and programming for justice-involved individuals. He is an ally with the Asian American community, and we'd like him to give us his words.
You know, this is it. National Day of Solidarity. National Day of Solidarity. What's going on in this country right now is that there's just too much divisiveness, too many divides. Compromise somewhere along the way has become a bad word. We no longer sit at the table and figure out how we can take care of each other. At the end of the day, remember, we are our brothers and sisters' keepers. That is a crucially important thing to remember. Additionally, in this country, it's a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And we need to make sure that our elected officials remember why we, in essence, hired them to go to whatever state house they go to do the people's business. 40 years ago, this was a tragedy, an extreme tragedy. But every single day, we're experiencing in this country mass murders. Every single day. So what I ask you as I'm about to turn over the microphone back to Linda, wherever she might be, is to amplify your voices. Yes. Raise your voices. Let people know in your family, in your community, and in your state houses that enough is enough, and we're not going to take this type of nonsense anymore. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Sheriff. Here today of hearing from a man whose life's work reflects what so many of us hope we can achieve. He is a colleague with me where we both serve as professors at law school. He has worked tirelessly to eliminate the disparities that keep us equality for all. His efforts span social justice to healthcare reform, and for those efforts, he received his honorary doctorate. Please help me welcome today Dr. Michael Curry.
Thank you, Linda. I am not dressed like a doctor today because it's Sunday, and I'm out with family, but I wanted to be here today. There's a quote by Dr. King that I always think about because I think it connects all of our communities that have been marginalized, that have been murdered, that have been experimented on, that have had barriers to equal access to health care and jobs. And Dr. King said a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So I want people to just take that in for a second. A threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So when you think about some of these murders going on across the country, we've had 250 hate crimes, mass shootings, I should say, many more hate crimes. 250 mass shootings or more since the beginning of the year. That's almost like 10 per week. So while you may not live in a Taiwanese community in California, or it may not be your child in Uvalde, Texas, or you may not have a gay family member that was in a nightclub that was murdered. The reality is we're all connected to that tragedy. That a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We have to get beyond this thing of saying, well, that wasn't my family, that wasn't my community, that wasn't my child. Because the reality is, if we let this stuff go on, it visits our homes as well. It will visit our families as well. So when I think about this young man, I feel as connected to him, though I'm an African American, he was not. I feel connected to him because he was getting ready to celebrate his bachelor party and his wedding, and they took his life over hatred. And what is that in a person's heart that makes them hate somebody they don't know? What is it in a person's heart that makes them take your life? And in this country, we've lost a respect for the sanctity of life. That when you're born, there's something that God intended for you to do, right? Maybe you're meant to find a cure for cancer, or maybe you're meant to solve climate change, or maybe you're here to do something really special, and somebody makes a decision to take your life out of hatred because of the place you come from, because you're Chinese, because you don't look like them, because they think you're taking their jobs, or their manufacturing of cars has been threatened by their perceived threat of another country's manufacturing. That's what we're talking about. So I think if we're here today, and I can leave any message, that contributes to this conversation, is that I don't want to forget him. And I don't want to forget those kids in Uvalde. We got to keep lifting up their names and telling their stories and remembering who they were, and who their families are that are struggling with that loss. Because unless we forget, we have a tendency in this country, to be very short-sighted. tendency in this country to be very short-sighted. Newtown, the murder of those kids out of school, we tend to forget, we move on. Mr. Chin, we move on, we stop talking about it, people don't reflect on it. So I would just say for all of us that are here today, we gotta now make a commitment that whether you're in Roxbury, the Bronx, Southside Chicago, East St. Louis, no matter where you are, when we see hate, we gotta call it out. We gotta say something about it, we gotta do something about it. So I am here as a member of the National NAACP Board of Directors. I'm here as a concerned citizen. I'm here as a person who represents health centers across this state. I'm making a commitment that I will call it out. That organizations that I'm affiliated with will call it out. And I will lift up this young man's name as long as I live. Let's celebrate his life and let's do something about change in this country.
Thank you so much, Dr. Curry. So there is a friend here, and he is very well known to the Asian American community. As you know, he is a staple in our community. He is everywhere, always present, always there, standing in solidarity and support of the Asian American community. He never lets us down, and today is no exception. President Flynn.
Thank you, Linda. It's an honor to be with you and Wilson and Esther and the district attorney, with City Councilor Erin Murphy, with the mayor of Salem, Massachusetts, Kim Driscoll, who's a candidate for lieutenant governor, with Mr. Curry, who's an outstanding leader in the civil rights community throughout the city. I don't know if I'm missing anyone else. But I'm honored to be here today. My friend Steve Tompkins, who's the sheriff, I'm honored to be here today to acknowledge that over the last several years, we've seen an incredible increase in hate crimes against the Asian community, against the AAPI community. Here in Boston, the most progressive city, most liberal city in the country, we've seen hate crimes here in Boston against the AAPI community, against the immigrant community, communities of color, but we've also seen it across the country as well, especially, but it's been increased by the hateful words coming out of Washington under the previous administration. During that pandemic, the Asian community was blamed for this pandemic. And as we saw the rhetoric coming out of Washington, we also saw the increase of hate crimes here in Boston, here in Massachusetts, and across the country. So we have a lot more work to do to address hate crimes here in our city, in our country, to make sure immigrants are respected and treated with dignity and respect, but also to ensure that our government is inclusive, especially on language access, communication access, making sure that immigrants and communities of color have access to city government and state government and the district attorney's office and the sheriff's office as well. I just had the opportunity to talk to some friends from the American Legion post of Chinatown, and here these men and women, here they are willing to risk their life for our country, and then when they come back to the United States, their parents or their sisters or their grandparents are being beaten up because they're Asian. So we have to acknowledge that it's happening here in the most liberal city in the country. It's happening across the country, but we must redouble our efforts to make sure that immigrants and communities of color are treated with respect and dignity here across Boston and across the United States. I'm honored to be with my colleagues in government and with my friends from throughout the Chinatown community of Greater Boston. Thank you.
Member of the AAPI Action Group here, and I'm proud to say that she was a member of the AAPI Action Group before she became a city councilor. She continues to work in solidarity with the Asian American community. She is one of our members, and so I would love to introduce Erin Murphy, City Councilor at Large.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, everybody, for being here and for organizing this special day. It reminded me that 40 years ago, Vincent was murdered, which tells us that hate crimes aren't new. And we also know that hate crimes haven't gone away. And we cannot accept or be okay with one hate crime, with one act of discrimination, with one word of racism. So I am happy to see that our sheriff and our DA are here, because that speaks volumes that we are going to take these crimes seriously, and that if you do commit a hate crime, that you will be prosecuted. That matters. People need to know that they should feel safe in our neighborhoods and our communities. Vincent didn't that night 40 years ago, and it's very special that we are lifting up his name, his life, and his memory. But we know that this happens way too often in too many neighborhoods, in too many communities. And as an elected official and as a member of the AAPI group, I care about the Asian community, about all communities across the city of Boston, and I'm here to work together with all of my colleagues in government to make sure that people feel safe, but not just feel safe, that they know they're welcome and that their voice is needed and wanted in our community. So thank you so much for having me, and I'm happy to be here on this summer day.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. A woman, an accomplished woman, I stand in awe of her. Her mother was born in Grenada and she was raised in Trinidad, so she understands the life of an immigrant. Her father is a U.S. soldier, and as you know, we love our veterans and our soldiers. We share that in common as we're both military brats. She knows and understands the sacrifices of soldiers. She knows and understands the sacrifices that the immigrant community makes. She is the mayor of Salem, Massachusetts. She has proven herself to be a creative, outside-the-box thinker who is solutions-oriented, driven by equity, diversity, with inclusion in mind, and making sure inclusion means everyone, which is all of us. Not leaving anyone behind is her motto. She has come time and time again for the Asian American community. Every time we call her, she is here. She is always present, always standing in solidarity. She is a champion against hate. And personally, I would say that I'm looking forward to her leadership as the next Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, as she leads us to stop hate crimes against people because of our race, our gender, our sexual orientation, or our identity. Mayor Kim Driscoll.
I'm so proud to be here with other members of our communities to stand up for what happened here 40 years ago, what happened to Vincent Chin 40 years ago. As a mayor, as somebody who cares about what's happening on the ground in our communities, it means a great deal to have leaders within our community standing up to not only remember this tragedy in terms of Vincent Chin, but his life and what it means for us today. Salem is a community that at one point in time, people turned on each other. We are now a community where we turn toward each other for help. We can't allow communities to have acts of racism, hatred, and vitriol. When we see that on social media, when we hear that language, it's up to all of us, certainly as elected officials and leaders, to stand up for that, but all of us to call that out. That's why I'm here today, to stand in solidarity with you, calling this out, remembering Vincent's life, and pledging to ensure as we move forward that we don't allow acts like this to continue. I think the Commonwealth is very lucky in that we consider ourselves a Commonwealth, not a state. Now, there's no legal distinction between that, but a Commonwealth means we stand for common good. Common good. That means we stand together to stop Asian hate, to make sure we're looking out for each other. When we see acts and incidents like this, we don't just let it go. We stand up for each other. Proud to be here with you today. Let's make sure as we move forward, this Commonwealth is looking out for all of us, particularly our AAPI community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Driscoll, or I should just say Lieutenant Governor Driscoll.